The one, I guess the one that jumps out to me was the first murder that I worked. First day I was in the office, there was a young lady, 19-year-old girl. She was killed and found burnt up in the trunk of her rental car. And the car was in one of the housing projects right in downtown Savannah. I mean, literally 100 yards from some of the wealthiest places in Savannah.
I'm Steve Murphy, DEA Special Agent retired and now host of the Game of Crimes podcast. If you've seen the Netflix series Narcos, then you know my story. I now bring you stories of heroism and bravery from our law enforcement and military heroes, and occasionally from the criminals that they faced. Welcome to Game of Crimes. Hey, gang, welcome back to this week's episode of Game of Crimes with Murph in the Morning. This week is just a little bit different. You know that people I've had on the show before, when I run into them, I'll do a catch-up episode with them. And this week what I'm doing, I've got two guests. They both have been on the show before, but they've both just released books recently. And I wanted to get these out here. I've read both of them, highly recommend them. Today's guest is, what's this guy's name? Kevin Grogan. Yeah, that's his name. And I got to tell you, Kevin and I, he was here on episode 151 back in July of 2024. Been a cop for over 15 years. He is now the author of 3 books, not just one book. I mean, I'm just happy to read one book, and this guy's written his 3rd book already. But Kevin, I want to welcome you back to Game of Crimes, brother.
Murph, I appreciate it. It's always an honor. I don't understand why someone of your stature would talk to somebody like me, but I appreciate it, brother.
Yeah, you're good for my ego, but you know what? I'm not sending you any money.
Nah, I got to try.
I appreciate you, brother. I do appreciate you saying that. It's part of that blue family. We all stick together.
We're definitely lucky to have the crew that we have, you know.
Absolutely. Whew, I think something went down the wrong way there. And if for you folks that don't know, Kevin here, he goes by the street name of Bootsy. He and Lou Velozzi, who's a former guest here on the show, they had their own podcast. It was called End of Watch with Bootsy and Sal, which that was one of the very first interviews I think Javier and I ever did on a podcast. It was long before I ever even considered a podcast. I probably couldn't even spell podcast back then. But you guys came through for us.
That was a fun one too. I mean, for guys like us to talk to guys like you was a huge honor for us. And look at the relationship that the relationships that I've developed from that podcast with guys like you and so many others. It's a great community.
It really is. That's the one thing I worried about when I retired was losing that camaraderie, and the podcast and the other things that Javier and I work on. They kind of keep us connected vicariously through the real heroes that are still out there.
Well, there's a bunch of people out there still doing it for sure.
Yeah, buddy. So let's get into this. I want to, first of all, ask you, I know you didn't grow up in Savannah, and I know you're not living in Savannah right now. So, but before the badge, before Savannah, before homicide and all that, who were you as a kid and where were you?
I was a punk kid in Connecticut. I grew up, I would say, upper middle class, right outside of the city of Hartford. I punched around a little bit, played football and was big into martial arts and boxing and that kind of stuff. Wasn't much of a student. Wound up doing a year between high school and college at a little prep school in New Hampshire called New Hampton School, just to get my SAT scores up and maybe get into a competitive school. Because I come from a family of very well-educated folks. My brother, he's got an Ivy League master's degree. My sister. Anyway, the rest of my family is much smarter than me. And I wound up at Westfield State College, right out of Westfield. I worked for my local police department. My first job right out of college was in my hometown of Windsor, Connecticut, which didn't last long, being the youngest of 5 kids. Before I was out of the academy, everybody's saying, "Hey, Grogan, I know Grogan. And all the veterans are like, "Man, we don't give a shit. We don't even know who that dude is." So I was a little young, wasn't ready for it then. So I joined the Green Gang called the United States Army. And the best thing I ever did in my life because, it broadened my horizons exponentially.
was going to say, I know your story, and you just got me with that one. You joined a gang.
It's all about delivery, Murph.
It works.
It's the best gang in the world to date. But so I went off, joined the Army, got stationed in Germany, which was awesome for me because I just happened to land in the perfect company for me. It was in headquarters, Heidelberg, where the United States European Command was. And my company was on their way to Kosovo. So I was a political science minor. And basically in the mid-90s, the biggest thing in the world was the breakup of Yugoslavia. So I got a chance to go to Kosovo within 2 months of being in Heidelberg. So I got to see boots on the ground, what I'd been studying for 4 years. And it was fascinating. I mean, it was really, really an eye-opening experience. Talk about broadening horizons. Came back, got the best job in the world. Was working protective service for the commanding general. So, I had to do really tough things. Like when he would go on leave to the French Riviera and stuff like that, I had to go with him, and
somebody had to take one for the team.
Stay in 5-star chateaus that the government paid. It was tough, but I got through it. I'm still seeing counselors to try and recover from that. But
as an American taxpayer, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for your sacrifice.
Well, let me tell you, the other thing about that, though, I made one fateful decision. I had just been promoted to sergeant, and it was 2001. So September 11th had just happened. And being in the position that I was in, we were seeing what was coming. So the general was very much involved in what was happening in Operation Enduring Freedom when they began there in Afghanistan. So there was a lot of things going on in Europe to help prepare the logistics and get ready for what would become Operation Iraqi Freedom and all that. And I remember walking down the hallway one day, a 2-star general named General Jones. I had gotten a MILPER message sending me to Fort Stewart, and he said, "Hey, we really like you around here. If you want to stay, we can make that go." And my dumb ass said, "Well, sir, I'm a newly promoted sergeant, and I really think my place is with the troops. And if we're going to war, I want to go too." Dumbest thing I ever said, Mark. But it got me an all expense paid trip to not so much the French Riviera, but Sadr City and Baghdad, and that was a life altering and eye opening experience. I wouldn't change it for the world. It kind of defined where my life would go after that, both good and bad. But it kind of leads into this book, the damage that was done there in my own brain that I never dealt with. It wound up catching with me later in life. But
well, let me just say seriously, thank you for your service. I've told you that before, and it's a true honor. It's a true honor to speak to a former military veteran, especially a combat vet. So, all joking aside, absolutely, you're a hero in my book, brother.
No, super kind of you. And the thing is, I honestly look at it this way because a lot of people they fight with that. Thanks for your service and that kind of stuff. And I appreciate that because it's like Vietnam vets to me. Those guys are heroes from day one. I don't care what they did. Yep. I think I've said it on your show before. I know I've said it to many other people on many other podcasts, is we failed that generation of soldier, Marine, airman, sailor. When I came home, I had yellow ribbons and applause in the airport just because of my haircut. I was walking through. Those guys got spit on and called names and that kind of stuff. And I think that's a sad chapter of our country. But those guys are my heroes, so absolutely. The thank you for your service thing to me is I was honored to be able to serve, and I really appreciate that and the guys that came before me and they're serving now.
So, ladies and gentlemen, you know what I'm getting ready to say. That's a hero right there. He'll never admit it, but that's what kind of makes a hero to start with. He was just serving his country. In my book, he's a hero and a patriot both. So all the respect in the world, brother. But before we go any further, I want to ask you, what is it that you think pulled you into a life of service where a successful family, you probably had a lot of opportunities, but you chose the military and then you choose law enforcement? Where do you think that came from?
Day one. My first memory like my first decision-making memory was I was about 5-6 years old, 1981, when President Reagan got shot. I was, from that point on, I knew I was going to be a Secret Service agent. That's what I wanted to do. Turns out they don't take people that can't see very well. So that didn't go. I got a chance to do protection in the Army, which was really cool. But my life's ideologies and stuff like that were formed with my family and my uncle Mac, who actually wrote the foreword in my new book. He was very well known, highly regarded detective and police officer in Springfield, Massachusetts, which is where my dad's from. And, I watched him. My gram, so my mom's mom, she used to keep a little scrapbook of all the newspaper clippings of my Uncle Mac. And I used to go up there to read. I can't tell you how many times I read those articles over and over again, because that, to me, that was a hero. And that's, if I had to put my finger on where the calling came from, that's definitely it.
Wow. Well, that's pretty impressive. And it's impressive that you thought enough of him to ask him to write the foreword of your book, because I read it. It's tells a lot of love there.
Yeah, he's a special guy, no doubt. Has always meant an awful lot to me.
When you came out of the military, how long were you in the military, and then why did you decide to get out?
5 years. Decided to get out because they tried to blow me up a couple times. My son was 4 months old when I left from my deployment to Iraq, and he was much bigger when I got back. I had missed some pretty important times with him. And anytime you're involved, which I'm sure you can relate, with a bureaucratic agency, which the Army is, just like any other government agency, I was looking. But I also knew I wanted to get back into law enforcement. So I was at Fort Stewart, which is in beautiful Hinesville, Georgia, just south of Savannah. And my ex-wife, her mother was a longtime detective in Savannah PD. So I just moved right in. And it came at a really cool time where the county, Chatham County, and the city of Savannah merged. So it was a Savannah-Chatham Metropolitan Police Department. And it was a great time to be there. It was a really good time to show up. And Savannah, I think, is one of the best cities to police in, because it's so beautiful. So when you're not chasing all the bad guys, you can sit and look around. There's nice places to be and look around. And then if you wanted to do police work, there was plenty of it to be done. So
Savannah is beautiful. It is. I think it's the stereotypical Southern antebellum type city with the Spanish moss in the trees and the mansions and the huge, huge oak trees everywhere. It's a great place to visit. Most people think of Savannah as that beautiful, historic, charming, touristy type place. But asking you, what does Savannah actually look like from the driver's seat of a police car?
Well, I mean, like I said, I always call it the Boston of the South. It's historic. It's beautiful. You got all the architecture. You have everything you could want, to include sports teams now, which is funny, not major leagues, but you got the Savannah Bananas and the Savannah Ghost Pirates, which didn't exist when I first started, but that's bringing in a little more. But the thing is, my concept of what Savannah was a book called Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil. It's one of the best-selling nonfiction books ever written. But what I learned is the quaint, it's kind of a hokey story. It's a hokey side of Savannah, showing all the affluent side of it. I learned very, very quickly that that's not the real Savannah. Those books. It's a very entertaining book. It's a kind of cool look at the city, but it's a very eccentric story. It's not the real Savannah. What I write about is the real Savannah, because I learned instantly. My first assignment was downtown, so where all the historic district is, and I learned immediately that those multi-million-dollar homes and all these businesses and one of the greatest art schools in the country are all surrounded by abject poverty, and it's a very active thing. I think it's the third or fourth largest port on the East Coast, so you know what comes with that. You got trafficking, you got dope, you got all of it, and there's plenty of that in Savannah.
Yeah. And at one point, when I was my first tour in Atlanta, I was running the DEA's mobile enforcement team, and we would get requests from chiefs and sheriffs in Georgia, Tennessee, North Carolina, South Carolina to come in. And we weren't going after the big drug dealers. We were going after the most violent drug dealers. And so we got a request from Savannah. I don't remember if it was still Savannah in Chatham County. This would have been in 90, let me think here, 99 or 2000. I think it probably been 2000. And went down there and started looking at the information they provided us. And I thought, man, I never would have believed this about Savannah, the violence down there. So, I mean, was that violence, was that mostly gang related or drug related, or is it ego driven, or is it like a no consequence type zone down there?
Well, you know how it is. It's always drugs. Whenever you're talking about money, everything is always money. Savannah's kind of funny in the fact that it's very territorial. So you can call it gangs, but mostly what it is neighborhoods. And it's the big city in the area, but it's not a big city. It's a small town. It's a big city with a small town attitude, and that transitions into those neighborhoods. So there's a saying down here, to include me now, is we're all related. Like everybody, we're all cousins. And I always ask people, are you cousins, like blood cousins or Savannah cousins? And that's how you kind of differentiate between who's who. But it's such a small world. So, but that violence, it turns from, just because you're kin to somebody down here, that doesn't save you from the heats that come in with the drug business, for sure.
Wow. And excuse me. So your latest book here, which is No Greater Honor, No Bigger Failure, is about you going into homicide. Where did that desire to be in homicide?
Man, that's all I ever wanted to do. I went through all this stuff. I got distracted by guns and drugs and all that kind of stuff, because that's how you learn to solve homicides. If you don't know what's going on the street, you're not going to solve. It's all about knowing the who's who, being able to identify who the real trigger pullers are. And if you see enough of that, you pick up on a few things. But again, my Uncle Mac, that was where he made his name, was in homicide. So to me, the most glamorous thing you could be, and I think the most glamorous and sought after position in any police department, the most, your name in the spotlight, that's going to happen in homicide. You're either going to succeed big or you're going to fail big. And I think I did a little both.
Well, so you had a very successful career, and ladies and gentlemen, you have to check out his other two books. The first one he wrote is Black Sheep, White Cop, which is underneath that is Savannah Exposed, and his second book was Ruffian. And I apologize for not wearing my Ruffian T-shirt that you sent me today. I couldn't find it. I looked, I just couldn't find it anywhere. But when you go into the Homicide Bureau, what changes inside of you?
At first, nothing. The big thing is it's a huge shot to your ego, which I didn't need help with. I was a pretty big fan of mine getting there. It felt like a long time for me. It felt like a long time coming, because I was Murph, I always was given the best opportunities in the department. Like I always hear people say, oh, I got held off of this, or, oh, this never happened for me, whatever. That's not something I could ever say in my career. Every time something big was happening, I managed to luck my way into it. It was like the right supervisor at the right time. I was just always in the right place at the right time to get into some of these assignments. The ATF task force, the expanded patrol operation happened. It was patrol officers, but in a crime suppression kind of go get them. I was just there at the right time doing just enough to get noticed to be included in those things. But again, always in the back of my head, I was doing those things, and I hit the gas pedal as hard as I could on the streets, because I knew ultimately I wanted to get to homicide. I had no idea what that meant at the time, but that's where I wanted to be. But because I was in the mix with, Expo was go get the most violent guys in the city. So I knew all of them. I got to know who they were, who their families were, and it's generational in Savannah, and I think probably any other city in the country. So if I knew you, soon I would know your sons or nephews or whatever, and you get a pretty good idea of what's going on in the city pretty fast, because again, it's not a very big place.
Well, you don't want to play down, or I don't want to play down your success, because I think that's why you got chosen for homicide. You were very successful, especially in that expo operation. And we all know you held Lou Velozzi's hand when he was the ATF guy. So,
yeah.
Love you, Lou.
Those guys. I tell you, it always cracks me up when I hear people, and I mean smart people, talking crap about the ATF because they have to fill out paperwork to get their suppressors or whatever they need. They think anytime people think of ATF, they really think of the regulatory body, and they don't know what guys like Lou Velozzi and Chris Bayless and Jay Dobbins and until those guys started telling their story, nobody knew what the ATF was. To be honest with you, I had no clue, but suffice it to say, I wound up knowing immediately, if you wanted to be effective in the fight against violent crime in any city, the ATF is one of the best tools federal law enforcement has to offer.
I always respected those guys. They're probably the closest brothers in federal law enforcement to DEA.
Yeah, I mean, guns and drugs go hand in hand, as you know.
Absolutely. So after you start working murders, what's the type of murder that, I don't know, stays with you the longest, one that you're probably just never going to forget?
Well, each one of them stay with you, Murphy. And that's the thing. So the way our office was set up, we worked on rotations. There were 2 teams, probably about 12. If we're fully staffed, you had about 12 detectives in a city of 150,000. But you got to understand, we were the county and the city. So now you're talking closer to 250,000 as the population. And you got 12 detectives working on that in a jurisdiction where you're talking anywhere averaging between 30 and 40 homicides a year. I think one of the years I was there was 54, which if you're talking about Chicago or LA or stuff like that, that's not a big number. But in Savannah, it's a big deal. And I give this plug every time. Memorial Health, the level 1 trauma center, if it weren't in Savannah, our homicide rate would be easily 100. They just do such a good job of keeping people here. It really tremendous work by the doctors and EMS in the county also. Wow. But as far as the ones that stick with it, the long and short of the story is we were the violent crime unit. So it wasn't just homicide. It was shootings, stabbings, domestic related violence. The murders were obviously the big ones, but any death, it was death investigation. So if you had child death, anybody basically under the age of 65 that you couldn't really figure out or put a finger on why they died, like medical history or something like that, we investigated all that stuff. So each and every one of those things, they all stick with you. They really do. The one, I guess the one that jumps out to me was the first murder that I worked. First day I was in the office, there was a young lady, 19-year-old girl. She was killed and found burnt up in the trunk of her rental car. And the car was in one of the housing projects right in downtown Savannah. I mean, literally 100 yards from some of the wealthiest places in Savannah.
Wow. We're not going into a lot of detail, ladies and gentlemen, because that's one of the first stories in his book. We want you to get the book and check it out. And just to lighten it up a little bit, where did this interest in writing come from?
Well, Murph, I got in big trouble. So my career didn't end great. So I got in a bit of trouble, and I was waiting, and which turned into a political nightmare, which you can read about in the first book if you really want to. And I recommend doing Black Sheep, White Cop, Savannah Exposed. But the thing is, I was sitting down and I had a felony indictment on me. So nobody, to include Home Depot or Lowe's, would hire me because they're like, hey, what's this? And I couldn't really, it wasn't adjudicated. So there wasn't a lot of work for me. And our buddy, no kidding, Lou came up, and, Jay Dobbins had tremendous success, deservedly so, with No Angel, and shortly thereafter Catching Hell. But Lou was like, if Bird can write a book, I can write a book. And that was absolutely true, because, his stories are tremendous. So I had befriended a guy who was running for mayor of Savannah, and his key and goal was to help fix the police department, which was in turmoil at the time. So I'm like, dude, I can help this guy because I know the ins and outs, and I'm already on the out, so I can tell him anything, and there's no repercussions. So he wound up turned out to be an internationally best-selling author. He wrote his name's Murray Silver. He wrote Great Balls of Fire, which is Jerry Lee Lewis's biography. So
nice.
Lou comes to me and says, hey, man, I'm thinking about writing a book. I'm like, hey, dude, I don't know a thing about writing a book, but I know this dude Murray, and I introduced him. So in some of those conversations, it kind of got the wheels flowing. And I distinctly remember the first night. I was laying in bed. I couldn't sleep. I'm sitting there. I got all these thoughts going in my head. So I got up and got in front of my computer, and I wrote like 40 pages that first night. It just came pouring out of me, and one thing led to another. And that's basically what my writing career has been. I get a thought, I start writing about it. One thought reminds me of the next thought, reminds me of something else and unrelated. And I mean, here we are 3 books later. So I've had a lot of thoughts.
You do a lot of thinking now, don't you? Was there a plan to write a trilogy when you first started writing?
Absolutely not. I really thought the first one was going to be what I call a coffee table book. I wanted to write about my boys, the guys that I work with, and guys and girls. It's kind of funny because I wrote the first one and I didn't mention any of my female brethren, and that was pointed out to me. And I was like, holy crap, how? Because I didn't realize what a chauvinist I was, but it turns out I am. And I don't mean that in a disparaging way. It's just it was so unconscious. And if you don't know you're not thinking that way, then you probably have some things. I'm old fashioned. It just didn't come out very well. So I made the apologies in the second book for that, because it was definitely pointed out to me. But that it got me going, and I thought I'd give 50 of them away, pat my buddies on the back, and let that be that. And it was a cathartic effort, because it did me a lot of good to get stuff. I was mad about things I didn't even know I was mad about. So writing it down was very, very good for me. And like I said, the first and second book, I'm telling you war stories. I'm telling you the running and gunning. I'm telling you all the good stuff. This third book is very, very different.
Yep. Well, you hear me say this about a lot of the people that we have on here that write books, but it's the book that those 2 books, all 3 of them, actually, when you start reading, you can't put them down. I read last week, I flew up to D.C. and back. I was just up there for one night, and I read it on the plane up and back. So it's not a complicated read. And I got to tell you, in all 3 of his books, he's very transparent. Kevin owns up to things that most people probably wouldn't put in writing. And if you want to know what I'm talking about, you go read the book. It's seriously, highly recommend. Your second book, Ruffian, give us just the Reader's Digest version of what that book's about, how it's different from Black Sheep, White Cop.
Ruffian was the best police work that I ever did. It was the best operation that I was ever a part of, because the thing is, you work the streets and you lock up these guys who are out dealing dope, running the gang stuff. But they're the trigger pullers. And when you lock them up for certain things, obviously you don't catch them in the big complex cases when you're on the street. So you see them again 6 months to a year later. They're on probation, parole, whatever. They're back out on the street. So I learned very early on in my career in an OCDF case with Toby Taylor. It was called Raging Waters. I learned the feds are the way to go. Get these guys. They get real time, no parole, that kind of stuff. So I sort of fashioned the way I did police work that way. And after working in narcotics for about 3 years, I came back out and was working back in Savannah and knew what to look for as far as gangs and that kind of stuff went. So I identified it. And again, I was talking about just how the timing always wound up for me. So the police department, our intelligence center, was run by an old sergeant of mine, and he was looking to make a big case. He was looking to get something started so we could do something about the shootings and the violence in the city. At that same time, Toby had just finished a storefront Toby and Lou had finished a storefront down in Brunswick. And so Toby was back in the mix, and he was looking for something to do. And two fisting the phones like, hey, you're looking for something? It just so happens I got something. And I had just hit a neighborhood where there were gangs running rampant. So it started that way. And I knew from earlier in my career how to kind of put that together and package it. And we went at it. And it was, all intelligence-led policing. So Ruffian, if I had to sum it up, it's basically my philosophies on intelligence-led policing and how it should be done. Because man, oh man, you're looking at the numbers, but I mean, we're talking huge reductions only in 2 neighborhoods. But I truly believe that could be expanded anywhere.
It makes perfect sense. Intelligence-led operations. Why would you not try that?
No, and the biggest problem is, I think since 2014, you've really lost. There's a really big disconnect. And now I'm saying this from the outside looking in, but there's a huge disconnect between officers and the communities. It's not that they're not trying, because they're doing all these things with coffee and cops, and they're creating these community engagement teams and that kind of stuff. That's not where you get your street intel, Murph, as you well know. The thing is, you got to be out there knocking skulls when you need to, cutting brakes when you need to. If you don't know your beat, and the thing is, I have always said this and will always say this, the most powerful position in the United States is that of a patrolman in a neighborhood, in a beat in this country, because you have a direct connection to people's constitutional rights. You can deprive a United States citizen of their liberty, and that's a huge responsibility. And if you're not doing it correctly, you're making irreparable damage to the fabric of our nation. You can destroy an entire department's connection with a community by doing it wrong one time.
Yep. And it seemed like you guys had rolling down there, and then some politics got in the way, and leadership was not leadership. Didn't sound like they were good managers even.
Any bureaucratic agency, once you have success one time and you go, it's never sustained. It moves on to something. And Ruffian ended basically because I moved to homicide, and Toby got promoted up the chain and wound up moving to Charlotte. So that essentially ended the operation.
That's where the new book, No Greater Honor, No Bigger Failure, comes in. And this is where Kevin moves into the homicide bureau up there. And we kind of covered that already. Is there anything that you want to bait us with on the book? Because I got some questions here I want to ask.
Well, the thing is, this one is 2 things. So what I wanted to do was show it twofold. So for the true crime genre, like people who really love true crime and they want to know what working an investigation is like, it's in this book. I break it down, pretty much my development, like, I didn't know how to do that yet, but I learned. And it takes you on scenes, it takes you in interview rooms, which is where cases are made and broken most times. And then the flip side of that is I told a very, very personal, like what was going on with me in my personal life at the time that I was trying to work these complex investigations. And what I want and pray that this book turns out to be is kind of a precautionary tale to a young Kevin Grogan or a young Louisville, the guys who are aspiring to be that. I want to show them, look, it is exactly what you think it is. It's the greatest job. It's the greatest honor you'll ever have, being a voice for somebody that can't speak for themselves because they're dead. But it comes with a huge price. And if you don't have your ducks in a row, and if you're not taking care of yourself, which is something you and I have talked about so many times, your mental well-being, it will jump up and grab you. So I want people to avoid the mistakes I made. And I, as you know, I don't sugarcoat it. I let you know right away, this is what I did right, and here's what I did very wrong. So
very, very transparent. So again, the books are Black Sheep, White Cop. That's number 1. Ruffian is number 2. And then No Greater Honor, No Bigger Failures, number 3. And I've got it pulled up on Amazon right here. So that's probably the easiest way to get a copy. Are they available other places that you know of?
As a matter of fact, my launch is going to be with 9 Line Apparel on River Street on April 18th, which is a big honor for me because they're a huge veteran-owned company. It stood up in Savannah. They've done so well nationally, but they're supporting not only veterans and law enforcement. So that's a company I can get behind.
Excellent. I've even got some of their apparel. And I paid for it because, I'm big on free. So let me ask you just some questions here, kind of related to homicide, but mostly related to that in Savannah. In your opinion, what does Savannah's beautiful image, what do they hide better than almost any other city in the United States?
What do they hide?
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, the dirt. I mean, we don't have alleys in Savannah. We have lanes because that's how pretentious it is. It's really, Savannah's very image conscious. But believe me, for every live oak tree with Spanish moss and SCAD Film Festival and Paula Deen restaurant or anything like that, it's a very violent city. We solve our problems in Savannah with guns. So, and it's constantly swept under the rug. The city government, everything is just, oh no, don't worry about that. And I go off on our city government all day long.
Yeah, and you do pretty good in your books there. It's just, I mean, it's the truth. It's not you're just bitching about something. It's what you had to go through.
And Murph, you've known me long enough. If it wasn't a real problem, if I was just griping, I wouldn't say a word. But Martin Luther King, one of my absolute heroes, said, the minute we start to be silent about things that matter, that's when our lives start to end. And I'm paraphrasing, but that I'm a huge and firm believer in that.
Yeah, I agree with you, brother. All right. What's the most effective thing you ever did in policing that would probably be politically impossible today?
I should consult with my attorney on this. Yeah, policing is very obviously changed. I always say I thank God that there wasn't YouTube and cell phone videos back when I was out on expo or on patrol in some of the housing projects. But you know what? The thing about that is it's just because I know how that gets spun. I'm not ashamed of anything. I don't have one single incident on the street where I can say to you, as candidly as I try to say anything, that I was ever ashamed or regret anything that I did on the street. If I hit somebody, Murph, believe me, they asked for it. But I played the game by the rules. So, but you couldn't do that style of policing. You can't do that anymore. I had a very 4-letter word vocabulary, but it was all in context. I wasn't on Broughton Street or the main street in Savannah saying, hey, put your seatbelt on. I wasn't out there saying that. But in some communities, in certain situations, if you're not talking like that, nobody's listening to you. So you got to do what you got to do.
Right. And just follow up with that. What did you see inside the law enforcement that bothered you more than anything that you saw on the street?
Apathy. It just, like I said, so we only had 35 murders. And like, if it were down one year to 32, people were like, hell yeah, violent crime is down. That's 32 dead people. And the stat that I use to track what the violence is really like in the city are non-domestic, aggravated assaults with guns. Okay. And people call it gun violence and blah, blah, blah. I don't call it. I don't blame the tool. I blame the behavior, which is violence. It doesn't matter. If we had no guns, we'd still be clubbing each other, doing the same thing. It's human nature. But the apathetic approach that not only the city of Savannah or Chatham County takes or the state of Georgia, it's national. We're just like, oh, and I say this and people get really, really red in the face when I say it, but it's the truth. As long as it's only poor black kids that are getting killed in Savannah, it's not going to change. It's not affecting people's bottom line. And I think that's as much of a travesty as like I said, how we treated our Vietnam vets, those things. You can't be apathetic about those things. Every life is important. So,
yes.
It's not okay that one person gets killed. Dope boy versus dope boy. Well, he had it coming. No, he didn't. He was a jackass making poor decisions, but death you don't recover from that. I don't care what anybody's done in their life. There's a recovery somewhere.
Yeah, I'm with you. And sadly, that seems to be the tone across the entire nation. And it seems like there's no real attention given to these major problems, especially violence and drugs and guns, until a politician's family member's involved. And then it seems to get attention.
And bingo. And I'll say this. So what we have learned to do is distract ourselves from the real problems. I always say you cannot solve anything if you're not addressing the real problem. But what we do is we distract it with race. We distract it with socioeconomic Democrats, Republicans, whatever we can do to look away from what the real problem is, because everybody wants a quick, simple solution. And that's not what law enforcement is. That's not how you deal with violent crime. They are grossly, hugely complex problems and investigations that are necessary. And if you're not willing to do the work to do that, we're never going to solve it.
Right. All right. Back to your book a little bit. Tell us about the suspect that you were convinced was going to kill somebody if you didn't get to him first.
Oh, no, he did. He did, and Murph, I had him. It's a great story in the book, but I will tell you, he almost got me because I was operating the HUA. I learned that in the Lieutenant David Oakes, New Britain Police Department, was one of my first instructors of the Connecticut Police Department. You'd say, so I'm driving down the street operating HUA, which basically is my head up my ass. And this guy, I was in the car with a killer who was armed and I didn't know it. It's a very, very interesting story. But what wound up happening is I wound up he was a suspect. I got enough evidence where I had probable cause to believe that he was involved in the murder of our Darian Jefferson, but I didn't get enough to bring the charge. Then I went through, I worked the case, never was able to close it. Then when I left the department, he went on to kill 2 more people. And I always live with the fact that had I done a better job, if I wasn't so caught up in, if I wasn't so screwed up with my own personal stuff, I truly believe I would have done a better job and he wouldn't have been out to be able to kill those other people.
Wow, that's you're putting a lot of burden on yourself there, brother.
It's a big load, but thank God, a young man, he's in Minnesota now, but Rob Santoro came back, followed, and he was able to put the charge for the other 2 murders and wound up getting a plea on the one that I worked. And a lot of people say it's a burden you put on yourself, but I put that burden on myself a long time ago, and you can't shy away from it. When you're guilty, you're guilty. If you do it, you do it, and you own up to it. And that's kind of where I'm at in my life.
Well, and so that kind of leads in, did this job in law enforcement, did that make you colder at home? And when how long did it take you before you really realized that?
I don't know that it made me colder at home. I just think it provided me an opportunity to make excuses. Because Murph, I was, and some people might disagree, but I was held in pretty high regard. I have a pretty big rep. I mean, here it is. I haven't been in law enforcement in 12 years, and people still know who I am. I have a pretty big reputation, but I bought into that. I thought I was super, super special. So the things that come along, let me tell you, don't disagree with me. All right. Because we had this conversation earlier, but I'm not the most attractive man you're ever going to meet, but, don't stop. I know, but, sitting at a bar working security and letting people know that you're a homicide detective, that's a pretty good line. And when you're a married man who is having financial difficulties and that kind of stuff, you want to believe something good. So that led to infidelity, which of course erodes the structure of your family and that type of stuff. And I was as susceptible, if not more so than anybody. Those are the roadblocks, or those are the things that I tripped over. And is basically believing my own. I really thought I was as cool as the guys on TV, like the guys in Narcos. I don't know if you can relate to that. You think you really are those guys or something, but I truly believed I was that cool. I was that good. I think outwardly I was behaving that way. Deep inside, I knew better, but I was compensating. But here it is all these years later where I look back on it and I'm just like, what a schmuck you were. But I didn't know what I didn't know then. I know it now. So the only thing I can do is, like I said, put it in a book and hope that the next generation of folks coming behind me don't make the same mistakes I did.
That's why we study history, brother.
That's it.
So we don't make the same mistakes twice. That's what kills me when people want to change the history books. You can't change their history, good or bad. It's our history.
And you can't change facts. You know, I was who I was, which has made me who I am now. There are a lot of people who dislike me and they have justified reasons. So I don't hold that against them. But there's a lot of people who love me. Still, they've forgiven me for some of my stupidity. And, I thank God every day that they have, because some of the relationships that I have today mean more to me than they ever would have if I hadn't gone through any adversity.
Well, not to sound strange when I say this, but love you, brother.
I love you too.
Seriously.
Man. No doubt. And I have zero problem saying that these days. Murph, one of the coolest things that's happened. So No Greater Honor's been out for a little over a week. And I got a Facebook message from the guy who is from one of my troops, for lack of a better term. He was my gunner inside our city in Baghdad. And he wrote a review for the book that it hit me, man. It got me. But that's when you know you've gone from whatever you were doing in your life to living right. I now feel very comfortable in the fact that I'll admit to all the things I've done wrong, but I've definitely done a few things right.
There you go. What part of the job hurt worse than anything you ever saw on the street?
Part of the job that hurt worse than anything I saw on the street. I think the thing is, and I think it's probably a very common misconception, when you graduate the police academy and you got your big shiny badge and your beautiful new blue uniform and your big cool gun and all that stuff, you think you're going to go out there and you're going to save the world. There's a reason they call that badge a shield. It's supposed to shield you from the things of the outside world, and that doesn't happen. I learned very, very early on that I wasn't going to save the world. Didn't stop me from trying. And if you're a younger police officer and you're listening to this, never stop trying. Go try and save the world. Keep doing it. But just understand, if you don't make it, that's not your fault. It's not your fault at all. It's a broke system. But if you're not there, standing there holding that line, then we're lost. So keep holding that line. But that I think is the one thing that it bothers me the most is I really thought going into it idealistically that I'd be able to save the world, and didn't turn out that way, Murph.
Yeah. Well, we try. And just like MLK said, don't lose hope. Never give up hope.
Oh, that's it.
What's the one story you've never told publicly because if you told it the way that it really happened, it would upset cops, politicians, maybe civilians all at once?
Holy crap. There's a question. Holy crap.
And obviously, you guys know, I didn't tell him about these questions. I just told him I had some questions.
Yeah, repeat that one, because now that got my head going there.
Yeah. So what's the one story that you've never told publicly? Because if you did tell it the way it really happened, it's going to tick off some cops, politicians, and maybe even the public.
The only thing that comes to mind, and I don't know if a politician would care, whatever. I was working my beat in Hitch Village. Okay, so it was a housing project, very, very poor neighborhood. And we're in Southeast Georgia. I'm the only white boy in the projects, believe me. So there was a rash of stolen bicycles all throughout the project. Kid was going around, and all he would do is hop on a bike, ride it to the other, wherever he's going, drop it, leave it, steal somebody else's bike, and go do it. Well, I'm getting all these reports, and like any other patrolman, man, I don't want to write stupid reports of a case that we're not going to solve, because, I don't want to lock a kid up for stealing bikes or whatever. But I knew who the little was. So I snatch him up, and it just so happened as I'm grabbing him, his dad was there. So his dad comes running over, like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Come on, let's go." So I found a little room where we could sit down and talk. Murph, I'm a very particular guy. I'm very particular about, one, the way I speak to people, but even more, I'm very touchy about how they speak to me, especially, age and that kind of stuff. So the young man is sitting there snapping his teeth at me. And I said, listen, if you smack your teeth at me one more time, I'm going to slap you full in the face. So I said, you got to stop. Snapped his teeth again. And instinctively, I just reached across the table and smacked the dog out of him. And he looked at me and he looked at his dad. His dad looked at him, looked at me. And his dad said, he told you not to smack your teeth. I was like, whoo. That would have been a federal indictment, I'm sure, now, but that's way past the statute of limitations. But maybe you were hoping for a more serious answer, but that's the one but it was justice, man. That kid, I never had a problem out of him again, ever.
And so that's back when law enforcement used to have discretion. I started in the mid 70s as a uniform cop, and you made the decision yourself. Now, felony, that's different, but to teach a young kid a lesson
without bogging down the juvenile court system, which is difficult all as it is. Murph, I've let a lot of guys go that could have gone to jail. A guy named Scott McCormick taught me. I caught a homeless guy pissing in a bush one night in one of the beautiful squares in Savannah. And I was a young rookie cop, and I'm like, oh, I got him. Okay. So, and the old war dog came rolling in, and he's like, oh, so what happened? I said, I was driving through. I saw him. He's in the bush. It's 2:30. There's nobody out. It's just this old man peeing in a bush. And he goes, yeah. He's like, okay. He's like, well, what city ordinance is that? I'm like, it's this, and it's public indecency. It's this, that, and the other thing. And I knew the statutes and all that stuff. He's like, yeah. He's like, so you definitely got PC, man, and you can lock him up. And then he paused dramatically and said, but should you really? And I thought about that. And that was such a good lesson to me. Like, just because I had everything I needed to lock him up doesn't necessarily mean I did. Was what was good for the community as a whole? Probably not. If I had caught him in a lane, trying doors, looking in windows and that kind of stuff, that's a reason where you want to take a humbug thing and remove that person. But in this case, he's just an old homeless guy. Where the hell else would he go? But it was a valuable, valuable lesson to me.
So after everything that you've seen and that you've been through, and you've been through a lot of things that most cops never go through, what still gives you hope?
The fact that these guys still answer the call. The law enforcement today, the challenges that they face with the amount of scrutiny that they do, it's unbelievable to me. But the thing that gives me hope is there's still me out there. There's still you out there. There's still those guys who the only thing that really matters to them is service, the greater good. There are still people who they're just wired that way. As stupid as I've realized it is, it's very important. It's one of those things where it's not a lot of money in it. The starting salaries in Savannah now are over $60,000, which is insane to me because I was solving murders for $18.43 an hour, which is incredible. I make more than that doing nothing now. But the thing is, it's never been about the money. So when you're talking about retention problems in police departments and that, which is a huge thing nationwide, they just throw money at it. Let me tell you, politicians, that's not going to cure your retention problems. It's culture. What you need to do is identify those people who still have that need, that want to serve and take care of their communities, and tap into that and give them the opportunity to serve. Don't get in their way. Politics have no place in law enforcement. Take your mayor, hire your police chief who is tactically and professionally sound and understanding what law enforcement is, and let him or her run their department. You are not a police officer, Mr. Politician. Let them do their job so they can in turn let their officers do the job and don't get in the way. They're not nice answers. It's not an easy thing. You're going to answer phone calls because bad things happen. Well, bad things happen because bad people are out there doing them. The police department only gets involved because they're trying to stop those bad behaviors, which we, the taxpaying citizens, want them to do. So let that happen. And that's what gives me hope, is that there's men and women who get up every day. They're not making money. They probably hate going to work sometimes, but they still do it. So there's my hope, Murph.
I'm with you 100%. They just give me motivation. I got to go to the DEA Academy here a couple of weeks ago, and one of the instructors brought me down to one of the basic agent trainee classes that was going through defensive tactics and self-defense, and got to talk to him for a moment. And just the pride that you have in these, I don't know a single one of them in that class, but just the pride that you have and the respect that you have for these men and women who are brave enough to come out and protect you and me, because we're has-beens now. We're retirees. We're not doing the saving people running towards gunshots anymore, although we probably would. But
I wouldn't get there fast, I can tell you that.
Yeah, but they keep you motivated, but they really keep you where you want to get out and do things. Anything you can do to support them.
I can't even imagine what that was like for them, having a guy like you walk into that. It's like Tom Brady walking onto a Pop Warner field and saying, "Holy crap." I mean, that must have been a huge lift for them. And you want to talk about looking at things, if you're a new recruit and somebody like you walks in there to say, even just give them the slightest bit of motivation, that would have had me running through walls for years.
Well, I appreciate that, brother. I tell you what, the funny part was they said, let's take a group picture, and I had to kneel down, and I'm looking around, could a couple of you guys help me get back up here?
Our hero, let us help you into the wheelchair.
You got to laugh about it. You know what? And anytime there's huge egos and type A personalities in law enforcement, military, but when you start believing all that hype, let me tell you, none of us are all that in a bag of chips. Right?
No, we're lucky. We're lucky. Like I said, I've always looked at my service as a privilege. I'm thrilled that I was given the opportunity to be able to do it.
Well, that the old saying applies here: you find a job you like, you'll never work a day in your life.
Exactly.
You and I were that fortunate. So we know that you're authoring some fantastic books. What else you got going on now?
Films. So the whole reason that I made this push to get No Greater Honor out is I have a short film that is halfway funded. I'm hoping this will fund the rest of it. And that short film is a proof of concept for another screenplay that I've written. So I'm really going to transition from the printed book to, which, by the way, I got to tell you, 8 years ago, probably almost 9 now, when I let Black Sheep out there, I was told that the printed word is dead. Like, nobody's going to be reading printed books anymore. It should only be Kindle, this, that, and the other thing. Yeah, hasn't turned out to be the case. I wouldn't read if I didn't have something physically to hold. My brother, the nerd that he is, like I said, Ivy League, master's degree. He's in the Human Rights Office at the United Nations. He introduces me as the only author who's written more books than he's read. So, just so you know, jealousy and envy is still alive very much in the Grogan household.
Oh, I love it. All right. So one last question for you. Now I'll quit hitting you with all these questions, but it's one that I ask most people, almost everybody. If a young cop or a young detective or just a young man or woman listening to this wants to understand what this life really will cost them, what would you want them to know before they raise their right hand and take that oath?
Yeah, you better know, you better believe and know that you want to do this, that you're willing to put not only yourself but your family. They're going to take a backseat to your job. It's going to happen. Be prepared for that to happen for at least 20 years. Like I said, my books they're absolute precautionary tales of what not to do. All right. They'll tell you fun cop stories. They'll give you a really good idea of what the job really is. But more importantly, these books will give you an idea of take care of yourself. Also, keep a very close eye on your brothers and sisters. Make sure that if you see them floundering, you don't hesitate to say, "Hey, are you okay?" Like, "Hey, what's going on? What can we do?" Because if you're not buddy checking, then you're doing yourself and your brethren a huge disservice. So my advice is definitely, one, keep your own together, because they teach you that in the academy, Murph, right? You can be running lights and sirens to help an officer who's down, and the hottest call you could actually ever have. But if you don't get there safely, you're no good to them. If you wreck, now you're taking resources from that hot call. It's the same thing in your career. If you are not taking care of yourself, you're no good to anybody. Trust me. I am the poster child of not taking care of myself and distracting resources that could have done better things for other people. So never lose sight of the fact that you got to keep your own head in the game, take care of yourself, take care of each other. And it's the greatest show on earth. There's no question about it.
It is. And nowadays, a lot of departments have the ride along programs. If you've never been around a cop to hear them talk and hear war stories, go sign up for a ride along program and see what you think, because it will change the way you look at everything.
And don't believe mass media. If your perception of law enforcement is watching TV shows, whatever they may be, or watching the news on MSNBC or CNN and thinking that is what law enforcement is, it's grossly misleading. They focus on the 0.00001% of things that go wrong. The other 45 million encounters that go flawlessly, or the heroic stuff, is very, very rarely ever shown. Again, that's what I tried to do in the books, to show people the good and bad, and it's all honest. It's all, man, there's no sugarcoating it.
It is. You were I've said it a couple times already, you're very, very transparent in all three of your books. So everybody, if you want to find out more about Kevin Grogan, on Instagram, he's at Kevin Grogan, and he's also at blacksheep_white cop. On Facebook, you can find him at Kevin Grogan. On X, it's Kevin Grogan 1108. LinkedIn, Kevin Grogan. I understand you're working on a website now. Is that right?
I am. I'm trying to figure out the one that works the best. So I'm not technologically savvy, but I did start a Facebook page today for the Savannah True Crime Trilogy. So that's my marketing genius. But the long and short of it is these books give you a really good. You get a cool look into a very cool city like Savannah, but it really is. They're cop books. If you want to know what it's like to be a cop, I think they're about as accurate as you'll ever read.
I agree. And once again, for those of you that are watching this on YouTube, you'll see a placard come up with this information. But the books are Black Sheep, White Cop, and that's Savannah Exposed. The second one is Ruffian, Ruffian, and the new one is No Greater Honor, No Bigger Failure. Highly recommend these books, especially if you're considering a career in law enforcement or the military or a first responder. You need your eyes open when you make that decision. And you said it very well, Kevin, too. It's not a 9-to-5 Monday through Friday job. It is a lifestyle if you're doing the job. It will affect your family. I'm just like you. I've had a practice wife before my marriage now, and we're coming up on our 42nd anniversary. So I think this one's going to last. But she had to put up with a lot of crap, a lot of things, me being gone. And, we had kids and we traveled all around the world. And so that's just my little advice to go along with Kevin. But brother, thank you so much for coming back, and thank you for what you're doing, that you're putting the realistic word out there. People watch these TV shows and think you're going to solve a crime in 42 minutes. That's not what happens in reality. You got to get out there and you got to do the footwork, and you got to make the sacrifice. So I appreciate you coming back, man.
I appreciate you having me back. And Murph, the other thing is, so to your audience, so Steve Murphy is obviously more than a DEA agent. He's a national treasure. And I'd say that whether he's here or not. But as I was contemplating getting this book out, and this book is very, very, is highly personal to me. It wasn't entertainment. It's one of those things where it took a lot to get out. And one of the things I had to do was think, I'm like, all right, who can I get who can I talk to try and help me get this word out here? And I reached to to several, but 3 legends responded, and Murph was one. So to have a guy like Steve Murphy put his name on my work, it was the same thing to me as asking my uncle, who's the reason I got into the business, to ask the forward. The fact that somebody would co-sign and put their name on something that I was doing lets me know that, 1, I was doing it right, and 2, that it matters. And Murph, that I will be forever grateful for you doing that. Thank you so much. And there's no way I could ever repay that.
No repayment expected, and stop embarrassing me here, because I'm not all that in a bag of chips. I'm telling you that right now. You know that.
I mean, I won't tell anybody what Javi says about you, but that's neither here nor there.
Hey, I got pictures of that. Yeah. All right. Listen, everybody, thank you guys so much for coming back every week. Go check these books out, please. If you want to listen to them on Kindle, they're available there. You find them on Amazon. Kevin was nice enough to send me electronic copies of them so I could read up on them and put my little 2 cents on it. But couldn't do any of this without you. You guys mean the world to me. Things are picking up in the game of crimes. I appreciate you so much for what you're doing. And I know it's not me. It's the guests I bring on here. If I ever think it's me, this place will go all crap. So thank you very much. I got to say it. I know some people don't like us too much, but I know why you keep coming back every week. It's because you enjoy playing the biggest, the baddest, the most dangerous game of all, and that's our game of crimes. God bless everybody. We'll see you next week.